Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me to this live on Facebook. And it's a real treat, this one. I went through some interesting times with sleep, and I thought I'd like to share them with you. My forensic approach to doing anything really is to have a look at what makes sense and what's behind the behaviour. So if your child won't go to sleep, why are they doing that? Because there's always going to be a reason. If your child wakes up in the night, why are they doing that? And I'm sure you've tried all the normal things like routine, baths, story time, warm milk, lights on, lights off, no computers for a few hours, etc. And that's what most people go through. And that's the typical sort of story you get told. And that's the typical thing most people are struggling to work on. And I've had this is a personal problem of mine that happened to me. So I'm going to share with you what I've found out. And there's a lovely picture of a cat there who, I mean, just looking at that cat makes you want to fall asleep to me. Learning to sleep is so important when you're young. And I do recommend that you tell this to friends of yours who are pregnant, because sleeping ends up as such a big challenge later on. And if we can get the kids going to sleep to start with, it would be so much easier. So I'm going to give you 3 topics that you've probably never heard of in the subject of sleep. One is sleep cycles. What are they? How do they affect people's sleep? What do they do? Breathing and grounding that I've talked to you about before. And also how multiple pictures in your brain affect your sleep. Most people just want a child to get to sleep, stay asleep all night, and wake up feeling refreshed. And you'll probably, if you're on this call or you're listening to it on Facebook, you'll probably conclude that you've got at least one of these. You can't get your child to sleep, you can't get them to stay asleep all night, and they wake up feeling a disaster. And so they're then grumpy the next day. And what's your child's behaviour like the next day after they've had a disrupted night's sleep? I learnt this one the hard way, and it's vital knowledge for everybody. I should just say I'm not a sleep scientist, I'm not a doctor. I just want to share some useful stuff that I found out along the way. So in order to try and get this cat to sleep, and I'm not teaching cats to sleep, I'm teaching children to sleep. First of all, there is sleep cycles. And sorry, this isn't a very great picture, but you can get the general gist. An 8 hours sleep, basically, from 0 to 8 along the bottom line here. So that's what most people actually need, apart from the fact that Margaret Thatcher used to say she could survive on 4. But anyway, we've got various phases. When you first go to sleep, you go into REM sleep, which is light, dreaming, eye movements, easily awake. Then you go into level 1, which is sort of drifting off down here. And then you go into level 2, which is light sleep down here. And that takes you through like anything from 5 to 15 minutes of falling asleep. And then what happens is your breathing rate goes down, your heart rate's going down, and your body temperature's going down. So it's all good stuff. Then we get into level 3 or 4, where we've got deep sleep or very deep sleep, and that's where we do rest and recovery. And it's more it takes time to achieve that, and it's really, really important for you to have gone into this rest and recovery situation, because that's when your brain is sorting out all sorts of things that have happened during the day. If you're woken up when you're in level 4, you may be completely disorientated. You may be all over the place. Whereas if you're woken up when you're in REM sleep, you're pretty awake. It's not so bad. When you go to sleep if the child goes to sleep on the sofa, just think about what level they're in when they try and wake up. I've got 3 kids. They were always going to sleep on the sofa. If I could get them, if I could pick them up get them to, when they were older, get them to get up and get back to bed when they were in REM sleep, they would probably go back into sleep again. If you got them in level 4 sleep, they were completely disorientated, could be extremely grumpy, and basically you didn't want to know So when they got older and they were in a deep sleep, I'd leave them on the sofa. And but that was when they were teenagers. And so just think about which one your child is in when you're doing this. So this was the piece that absolutely saved my life, because my child, my first lad, so I didn't know what I was doing, woke up approximately 7 times every night in more and more distress, because every time he came up to REM sleep, he woke up, he popped up again. And when I saw this picture, I went, oh, so that's what he was doing. People normally wake up approximately every 90 minutes or come up into REM sleep approximately every 90 minutes. And if nothing's going on, they're absolutely fine. They pop back down again. Something's going on in the house that they think it needs investigating. If you're an adult, if you hear a funny noise, you'll hear it when you're in REM sleep. And you may want to get up and use the bathroom, or if it's a child, they're more than likely going to cry because they've suddenly been jolted out of their sleep. They don't know where they are, and it's all very confusing. And so it's really important to understand what is going on when a child keeps on waking up in the night. And I was so relieved when I found out what was happening. And then, as usually happens with me, once I can understand something, I can do something about it. And the key thing is the environment. The environment when a child goes to sleep has to be the same as the environment when they come up through REM sleep 7 times a night. So, for example, the thing we did absolutely wrong with our son was to play music. The music was there. He would go to sleep absolutely fantastically. And, of course, 90 minutes later, or even less in his case, actually, when he was when he came up into the next cycle, he would just wake up and cry because the environment wasn't the same. And that is something that nobody in my experience has ever taught about sleep. And it's so, so important. So he used to go, when he was really tiny, he used to go to sleep feeding, and then I put him into his cot, absolutely fine. What happens? Between 30 and 90 minutes later, he was awake, yelling his head off because what the environment that he'd gone to sleep in wasn't the same. And I really do recommend that you get children to, especially say this to pregnant mums, get them to go to sleep on their own as soon as possible, because that is the trick. They need to put themselves to sleep. When my twins were born, I'd learnt the lesson, and I used to put them to bed awake. And within very, very soon, they were extremely good at putting themselves to sleep. And so that is my recommendation. Another thing that can happen is if they are interrupted by snoring, their snoring or somebody else's snoring, or even have the awful thing of sleep apnea, it can be particularly hard for them in the morning because that lack of sleep messes up their concentration, their mood, and their most basic of activities. It just affects everything, including your immune system, hyperactivity, all of those things. So if you've got any questions about sleep cycle, then do put them into Facebook, and for those people on the Zoom call, we'll cover those in a few minutes' time. The next thing is learn to nose breathe and get grounded. And I've talked about this in previous sessions, but I just wanted to bring it back again. The picture on the right of the little chap in mouth breathing is so frequent. And I remember before I knew about breathing, thinking that when my child was gently snoring, that was a really good thing because I knew they were asleep. But nose breathing gives them a much better quality of sleep, and it gets me to sleep. What I do now is when I go to bed, when I want to go to sleep, I nose breathe for 5 minutes and I'm asleep. And I'm trying to do it all day long, but I'm doing it very consciously when I get to bed. Unless you breathe calmly through your nose at night, you will have no idea This is a quote from Patrick McGowan, who I learnt about the potato method from. He said, unless you breathe calmly through your nose at night, you will have no idea what it feels like to have a good night's sleep. And I've absolutely proved that so many times. It was a complete shock to me when I first started nose breathing at night, and I wake up in the morning feeling bright and alive and rearing to go. Just a completely different experience. Nose breathing stops you snoring for most people because it stops your, if you haven't got your mouth open, your tongue won't drop to the back of your throat. And if you've got your mouth dry in the morning, so if your children need a drink first thing in the morning, you can guarantee they're mouth breathers. The third real gem is a racing mind, which is normally pictures. They can have nasty ones, which turn into night terrors. And so they're actually too scared to sleep. And so what you've got to do is help them get control of their images and help them change nasty ones into nice ones. Nice ones, children can be running videos. One of my children used to say that they would run Disney videos whilst they were going to sleep, about 6 at a time, which I thought, she is extremely visual, and which I thought was just as startling. But actually, she said it's really good at putting me to sleep. Rerunning a TV drama, I don't know if anybody else has got this one, but I find that when I've been listening to a TV drama, which is normally some sort of whodunit, I tend to rerun the drama when I'm trying to get to sleep with checking for errors to make sure that they've actually told us all the information we needed to know to work it out. So I think that's a bit of a bizarre habit of mine, but I'm sure other people will rerun other things. And if you have good ideas, for goodness sake, just have a pad next to your bed. Wake up, write them all down, and then you empty your brain. And I have a little trick with my brain. I go, have I got everything on the paper? And if nothing happens, I have. If I haven't, I get more ideas coming out. And the most important thing to do is get grounded. Oh, another trick you can do, I forgot to put on this slide, is if you've got, your brain is racing on all sorts of different things, give it one thing to think about. So give it a magazine article that's really quite short, that you don't have to panic about. If you read a book, some people will just want to get to the end of the book. But if you give it a magazine article that's on one topic, you'll get actually focused on one topic. That helps no end as well. I talked last week about grounding and earthing, which relaxes the nervous system. The Americans call it earthing. And the book I think I referred to last week, but I'll tell you again, is called Earthing, written by a cable TV man, a cardiologist and a natural healer. And it's got a lot about improving your sleep with grounding sheets that you can purchase. And they're similar to grounding your electrical system in the house, but they ground your personal electrical system while you're in bed. I used to use one for a few years until I smashed it in the washing machine. But I found it to start with really, really invaluable. But I prefer now to teach people to breathe properly and to ground themselves. But to get people started on this route, it can be really useful. And of course, you've got nose diaphragmatic breathing, which increases the oxygenation in the brain, which means it's going to slow down these running videos anyway, and the hyperactivity. So just think for a moment, what would a good night's sleep be like for you and for your child? So just make a couple of notes about that and keep reminding yourself, and watch your language. Don't say, I can't sleep. Your brain doesn't, your subconscious doesn't do negatives. You want to be saying things like, I'm dozing off. I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling like going to sleep. Things like that. Don't put any negatives in there. So you've got 3 things: sleep cycles, breathing, grounding, and then knowing what you want. There was a lovely book I saw advertised by somebody. I don't know, I haven't managed to get hold of a copy yet, but this makes me feel a bit dozy. The Rabbit Who Wants to Fall Asleep. And so I thought that was might be quite a good one for kids. And there is something called the Children's Sleep Charity.org.uk, but I don't think they're doing anything about sleep cycles. I don't know that they are. And I think sleep cycles was the most important thing that I found about. So I do hope you get some improved sleep, and